You ever sit in a meeting and about 5 minutes in, you're already tapping your pen on the desk, staring at the clock, and wondering how this became your life? Yeah, same. Now, every once in a while, though, you'll walk into a meeting and everything just works. It's like it's right in the slot, just past the click. It's tight, it's efficient, people are talking, they're bebopping and scatting, but nobody's wasting time. Problems are getting solved, nobody's hiding, nobody's pointing fingers. It's just pure execution. And you walk out of that meeting thinking, all right, whoever's running this, they know what they're doing. All right, they got their pants on straight. They got their shoes laced up tight. And that's today's guest. Because here's the thing. We talk to drivers a lot on this show. We talk about the day-to-day. We talk about the grind, the job itself. But every once in a while, you got to swim upstream a little bit. And you got to talk to the guy who's helping build the system that all of that runs through. The guy who's making decisions on what freight we take, what customers we partner with, how we grow and don't grow, and how we keep this whole thing from turning into one of those bloated, overcomplicated messes you hear about everywhere else in this industry. And I'll tell you right now, this conversation that we're about to have goes deeper than what I ever expected it would. We're talking about why some companies make this job a lot harder than it needs to be. We talk about why customer relationships are either everything or you've got nothing. Why sometimes the smartest move in business is to say no. And why the difference between a driver and a professional is a lot smaller and a lot more important than what most people think. So if you've ever wondered how the decisions get made behind the scenes here at Bulk and Spur, or why things are done the way they are, you're going to want to lean in and tick the volume up just a little bit. Slide into the slot just past the click with me for this one. It's another employee spotlight here on Always Pneumatic, Never Static.
You're listening to Always Pneumatic, Never Static, the totally pressurized podcast brought to you by Bulk Transit, where we keep the lines clear, the tanks empty, and the conversation anything but dry. Whether you're running powder, pellets, or anything in between, pull up a seat, crack the windows, and let's hit it.
How's it going out there, Bulk and Spur? Welcome into Always Pneumatic, Never Static. Thank you so much for joining us here for episode 11 of your podcast. And, after we get past and into double digits, that's when I feel like we're cooking with gas. And today's episode is no different. We've got another awesome employee spotlight, a little block of employee spotlights that we've got going here. Of course, we talked to Tim from Safety last week. We've got an employee spotlight that I'm not going to spoil for you this week because it's coming up in just a couple of seconds, so you'll figure out who it is soon enough. And we're also going to have an employee spotlight next week. Now, after that, I'm looking for some drivers. I need, 4, maybe 5 drivers, however many want to come on. I can welcome as many as 6 at once. But for this episode that I've got coming up in a couple weeks, I will happily break the format, and I will do 2 segments if we have enough drivers that want to take part. And what I'm looking for from you is to come on and share with me some of your off-time hobbies. We've talked a lot about trucking in these first 10, 11, 12 episodes, and we're going to continue to talk a lot about trucking during the lifespan of this podcast. But part of this podcast is getting to know all of our drivers. You guys are the stars after all, and I've always had a lot of fun finding out a bit about what drivers do in their off time. We all know what you do on your on time. You deliver for Bulk and Spur. You got a flawless record in doing so. Your customer service is top notch. The business runs like a well-oiled machine. Everybody respects everybody and works together for the common goal, right? These are all the things that we do here at Bulk and Spur. It's pretty simple, standard operating procedure type stuff, if you will. But I want to pull back the curtain on what you drivers are doing when that ELD is not logging your time. When that truck is parked and it is not in motion, what are you up to? Are you playing video games? Are you turning wrenches? I know a lot of truck drivers like to get into the shop and work on project cars when they're off. Or maybe it's a motorcycle. Perhaps you're more of an outdoorsman. Maybe you're a hunter, a fisherman. I would love to talk to all manner of you. Maybe you're a family man and it's all sports and kids' activities. Bring that to the table too. Let's find out what some of you bulk and spur drivers are doing in your off time. And how you're going to do that? Simple. If you want to take part in that podcast, head on over to podcast.bulktransit.com and send me an email. It's very simple. You can also get in touch with your dispatcher and have them reach out to me. That's a definite way that we can do it, but that's one more degree of separation between you and I. So let's do it the easy way. Once again, the website is podcast.bulktransit.com. If you bookmark that, that's the whole podcast right there. That's everything you'll ever need. That's contacting me to come on the show. That's listening to the episodes. That's finding out what the episodes entail. That's taking the quizzes. That's all of it, okay? So podcast.bulktransit.com. I need drivers. Reach out to me. Let's talk about some off-time hobbies. I've got a ton of them myself, okay? I'm just going to go down a little laundry list of things that I would love to hear if you do, okay? I'm a golfer, huge golfer, and hey, 'tis the season. I don't care that the pollen count is up in the triple digits over here in Eugene, Oregon, and it's raining most of the time. My butt is out on the golf course once February ends and March hits, so I'm already a month in. Would love to talk about your game or your favorite tracks out there that you like to play. I'm also a drummer. I've got a cover band that plays pop punk covers, Blink-182, Green Day, you name it. Maybe you're a musician. You want to talk a little bit about that. I would love it. Maybe you build model trains. I don't care. The point is, I'm looking for you drivers, and I wanted to spend the first part of this episode doing a little bit of what we call a call to action here in the industry. I want to meet as many bulk and spur drivers as I can, get as many different drivers on the episode as I can, but I will still talk to you if you've already been on the podcast. So no restrictions, no holds barred, whatever off-time hobbies you want to come on the show and discuss and share about, I'm game. Podcast.bulktransit.com is the website. That's where you can get in touch with me. And that probably ends the call to action and the homework segment of today's episode. So thank you for locking in with me for those first 5 minutes. I'm dependent on you here, and I want to hear from some of you drivers. What are we doing today? Well, today is another awesome episode because it's another employee spotlight. I bet you found out some things about Tim Hamilton last week that you didn't know. Obviously, you work close with him all the time, but you don't get to have just an unimpeded, uninterrupted, 1 hour long conversation with him all the time, just asking questions about the job and what he's up to and how he feels about this, that, and the other thing. And that's what we can do here on the podcast. And like we said last week, Tim and I didn't get to half of what we had written down to talk about. And so we're going to have Tim on again for that purpose later on in the life of the podcast. Expect it. And today's episode, I think, will be no different because when I was in Columbus at the Plain City Terminal for our discovery, when we were there meeting everybody, trying to figure out what the podcast was going to be about, we got to sit down and have long, uninterrupted conversations with a lot of staff members. And this one today, just like Tim, really stood out to me in his passion for the job and just the way that he approaches each day. I've never seen him come into a meeting with anything but a big smile on his face, which I will tell you is not the norm across the trucking industry, so I love to see it. And today's employee spotlight here on Always Pneumatic, Never Static is on Sean Stevens, and we're going to get him in here right now. All right, welcome back into Always Pneumatic, Never Static. We've got our guest on board today. Super excited to have him here. And I have to say something about this guy before I even welcome him in here because he might, and I'll say this too, I've never had a reason to compliment somebody on this before. But Sean Stevens runs the tightest weekly meeting that I have ever been a part of in any capacity, in any job. All I do for the last 4 years in this job is take meetings and record podcasts. But Sean Stevens joining us now. He, of course, is your director of operations for Bulk and Spur. And Sean, I mean, hats off to you, man. The most well-organized, tight meeting I've ever been a part of. If that's the way you approach everything that you do at Bulk and Spur, it's no wonder you're so good at the job, man.
Marcus, I appreciate it. Thank you. And I try not to keep it too tight. That's actually fairly loose. I don't want to bore people. We like to cut up a little bit.
It's true, and that was something I felt. I shouldn't even have been in this meeting. You gave me the privilege of being the fly on the wall here in your terminal manager meeting, and that's what I felt. Is everybody's personality came out a little bit, but everybody was Johnny on the spot when it came to reports and everything. And I was really impressed. And also, you know what else I noticed in every meeting we've ever come into? You've got a big smile on your face, man. I get the impression that you like your job, Sean.
I absolutely like my job. I like my job. I like the people. I am happy to say I do not dread getting up in the morning.
That's good. That's good. Well, let's start out a little bit and talk about some of your experience in the industry and then kind of walk that into you finding Bulk. How long have you been in the transportation industry as a professional?
28 years.
Wow. So a long storied career. And what type of things? Has it always been on the ops side? What type of other jobs have you worked in the industry?
It has always been on the ops side, exception being I did do a 3-year stint on the maintenance side, working with commercial shop operations. So it was kind of a little bit of a deviation, kind of fun.
And definitely, I would say probably a different, is it a different environment, like a different speed over on the maintenance side?
So.
Yeah,
very much so. Very much so.
Always something going on, I imagine. Well, that's really cool. So talk to me about finding Bulk. I know it was kind of an interesting situation where you interviewed and everything, but how did you come about the job? What about it was attractive to you?
Well, Marcus, it was it was through a recruiter had reached out to me, hey, what do you think of this opportunity? And at the time we were living in Texas, nothing against Texas, but it wasn't really a good fit. My wife really wasn't that happy. So, I was looking around, I was open to opportunities. So I was like, You know what? I'll reach out to them. We'll see what happens. So, did my thing with the recruiter. Next thing I know, I'm getting an invite for a virtual meeting. And, it was with, Brian, I believe it was Brian and Andrew. I can't remember if Brad was on there or not. But, we had our conversation and I thought it went well, but, it was a good length of time. And, by the time it got around, I was like, I guess nothing came of it. And next thing I know, I'm getting another phone call from the recruiter. They would like me to fly into Columbus to meet with them. And I love the idea of it. But unfortunately at the time, I was down a person at my operation and I was kind of filling 2 roles. I could not get away. On the week during the week without it being detrimental to the operation. I just wasn't going to do that. So, I discussed that with the recruiter, figuring, well, I'm probably not going to be able to make this happen. And this is kind of what started me raising an eyebrow about Bulk and about the DeWolf family. The next thing I know, they're offering to set me up to fly out on a Saturday. I'm like, if they're willing to go all out with that, yeah, I'll do it. I'll take the Saturday. I will fly to Columbus. So they flew me up here. Brian comes to the airport, picks me up, and I spent the better part of the morning with Brian and Brad and Andrea. And it was wonderful. It was a very conversational interview. We covered a lot of ground. We really did. And by the time that was done, they took me on a tour of the facility, took me to lunch, all the good stuff. So Brian took me back to the airport and I felt really good about it. I thought it went great. And I felt so good about these people that I actually called my wife from the airport and was like, I don't know what it will take, but I'm going to work for these people. One way or another, I want to work for these people. It had nothing to do with the company. I had no idea beyond, what research I'd done and, what they told me about the company. It was all about them.
Sure. I can definitely understand after being there and getting to meet everybody and sitting in the same room. And listen, I've worked in the industry long enough to know it's few and far between the ownership that's going to come in on a Saturday and spend half a day with you. I'm sure you know that in your 30 years in
Yes.
the industry. So that had to impress you, just that alone.
That alone did. And then, everything else just
Right.
I'm sure you've heard people talk about family here,
Mm-hmm.
and the family atmosphere. That's no joke. It is no joke. This is truly a family.
So it kind of sounds like it was the people, the way they talked, the things they said, and maybe even the things you didn't see right then and there that Saturday, because you're still here now, you're running a tight ship, and it seems like you're loving it. So even the stuff that you didn't get to really research must have worked out pretty well, Sean.
Oh, it absolutely did. Yeah, a little bit of trepidation coming into it. My background is bulk chemical, liquid,
Mhm.
and I had some familiarity with dry bulk. With a couple of the companies I worked for, we did have some dry bulk segments that I was involved in, but when it came to bulk chemical, I was an industry expert. If you ask a question, I knew the answer. I'd done it for a long time.
Mhm.
So this was a little different. This was getting into nuances of a segment of the industry that I just wasn't familiar with.
Right.
So, for the first time in a long time, I had a learning curve.
And yeah, it seems like
I was a little
something
nervous about that.
well, and look, that comes with every job, right? Changing any career, especially when you've been at a place for a while, maybe you've gotten comfortable. Jumping into something new is always going to provide that trepidation for you. But seems like the learning curve must have planed out for you at some time. How long did it take before you really felt like it clicked for you, Sean?
Oh, I'm still trying to find the click. No, I mean, there's been just tremendous support. My predecessor, Jeff Schramm, he did a phenomenal job of getting me inserted into the operation, making me feel, comfortable in the position before he left. We had a good bit of overlap before he
Okay.
officially retired. So that was very helpful. And the depth of knowledge and experience, obviously with the family, that goes without saying, but it just within our organization, the depth of knowledge is just phenomenal. So if I have a question, I've always got it's easy to find an answer.
Sure.
It
Well, I'll
really
tell you,
is.
Jeff, working both of our dream jobs, retired from the transportation industry and is now managing the grounds at a golf course.
Yes.
I don't know if that's because he just couldn't handle not having something to do, or because he wanted free golf. Either way, it's good in my book. What a great
It
move for
worked.
him, right?
I actually got a good laugh at him last time he came in. He had just gotten the gig over the whole thing, and he just wanted to go in and be a groundskeeper. He
Yeah.
didn't want a job. He just wanted a retirement with a little bit of play on the side. And I was laughing at it. I was like, well, looks like you ended up getting yourself another full-time job.
Yep, 18 new babies to take care of
Yeah,
there
exactly.
every single day. Well, that's awesome.
Yeah.
We'll get Jeff on the podcast sometime.
Oh,
We
you
actually
need to. He's a great guy.
Yeah, we tried to get him on for the OGs of Bulk episode that we did, but he's a busy guy. He's managing a golf course, so we just couldn't make it work, but we will, because that's a peek back into Bulk's history. And again, just a fun guy to talk to. I got to have a conversation with him. I won't lie to you, it was mostly about golf. But we did talk a
I'm not
little bit about
surprised.
yeah, we did talk a little bit about trucking. So now, Sean, something that you said to me back when we were at the Plain City Terminal meeting everybody in our conversation, you sat down with my producer, Jessica, and we had an awesome conversation. I think we went for well over an hour, and I was taking just stream of consciousness notes the whole time. One of the things that really stood out to me that you said is that in your experience, a lot of companies will overcomplicate things on the operations side. What does that actually look like, and what does keeping things simple look like in your mind on the operations side?
This is not that hard of an industry, but it can be made incredibly difficult.
Mm-hmm.
And especially when you get into larger companies, and I've worked for some of the biggest players in the industry, and they layer so much nonsense into their operations. that it buries the operators. It just buries them. So I love the idea of being able to come in to a little bit smaller company, a family owned company that has not fallen into the trappings of big corporate nonsense and, you know, layer upon layer of approvals to go through to actually get the simplest tasks accomplished.
Mm-hmm.
It's really a breath of fresh air, and it allows a lot of opportunity to let the experts out there in the field, you know, let my managers manage, let them do what they do best.
You know, I find that with smaller companies, it seems like they, especially well-run ones like Bulk. Now, this isn't the case for all of them, obviously, but for ones that run as well and as tight as Bulk does, it seems like the ownership empowers the employees to make decisions.
Absolutely, they do.
Yeah, and
Absolutely.
isn't there, your guys aren't looking over their shoulder all the time, and that goes through every layer of the business, right? The drivers have told me, look, the dispatch isn't micromanaging me. We have a relationship. They know what I'm doing, I know what they're doing, but they're not knocking on my door asking me how it's going or if I'm doing it or anything like that. And would you say that's sort of I mean, you just said it about your terminal managers, let them manage. That's also probably the way they manage their crews is, look, I'm not going to be sneaking over your shoulder all day. Do your job. You know how to do it.
Yeah, that's the best way to handle it. I've always been a firm believer, be there for them rather than micromanage and do to them.
Mm-hmm.
I can't micromanage, it's not in my nature. I hate to be micromanaged. So I myself really can't bring myself to do it. I want to be there for them. And
Sure.
I believe that, you know, the folks out there in the field, they feel the same way about the drivers. They get to know them. They get to know their strengths, their weaknesses, their capabilities. That way, you know, they can be there for them and anticipate a problem that might come up and, you know, give them the help and support they need. And I mean, you know, is there those times that, you know, we've got to put a little bit of extra focus, a little bit of extra effort into somebody? Of course. And that's fine. I'd rather do that and, you know, get the extra effort put up front and, you know, have somebody really good on the backside.
Sure. Yeah, it's all about that. It's sort of a nurturing environment, right? If you're going to
Yeah.
step in, do the job for them, constantly be looking over their shoulder, you're probably not building an employee that's capable of being empowered and making those decisions in crunch time, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you know, some of these guys, they know a lot more about this industry than I do.
Yep.
You know,
Yep.
let them be the expert.
Boy, I could tell you right now, and having been in middle management in a different industry before, you just make me want to run through a spirit line high-fiving everybody when a guy with your job title says that micromanaging is not in my nature, because it's prevalent in almost every industry where people can't let go. They have to control every little aspect of things, and it sounds to me, I mean, you've got a big team, right? What do you got, 10 terminal managers that you're overseeing?
Yep.
If you were trying to do everybody's job for him, Sean, you wouldn't have a smile on your face at all these meetings. I see a smile,
No, I
and
would
I
not.
guarantee it.
I would be a little frustrated to say the least.
Can you give me some examples where companies might get themselves in trouble trying to be too smart or overcomplicated on the ops side? Is it too many systems, too many layers of approval? What type of things are we really talking about in specific when we talk about getting too complicated in operations?
Honestly, all the above. So I've seen companies. I actually had this conversation with Brian during the interview. I've seen companies that have put new systems in place. You know, the latest and greatest thing. In fact, we're just now getting ready to. We're working towards anyway a new TMS platform,
Mhm.
transportation management system. And I actually brought this up in our discovery with the company we're using. A new piece of you know, technology will be thrown at us, and the next thing you know, it's the managers that end up spending more and more time feeding the machine than what the machine is actually warranting.
Copy.
We're not getting the payback from all the effort we're having to put into it to keep it going.
Mm-hmm.
It's just, that's only one example though. I think the biggest thing, honestly, is people that are detached from
interesting.
the actual operations out in the field that deal with the drivers, deal with the customers day to day. I call them the talking heads.
Mm-hmm.
The talking heads know more than about those operations than those people that are actually living it. And that is nonsense. Absolute nonsense.
It reminds me of a story. I had a buddy that worked in preventative maintenance for a long time, and his whole job was to go into these big factories and demolish something and rebuild it a different way. And he would be boots on the ground in there looking at how the pipes have to move and where this staircase needs to be. And then he would get the plans from an engineer that had never actually been in the warehouse before. And he looks at the plans and he says, "This can't work. I'm not an engineer. I can't tell you why the math doesn't work, but I can tell you that there's a wall there, so I can't put a staircase there. And you can't see that unless you've actually set foot in the weeds." Is that kind of what you're talking about? Is those employees that are out there in the weeds have such perspective for what's actually going on that maybe they understand it a little bit better?
Yeah, 100%. You start getting into these companies that want to bring in the Six Sigma methodologies, and we can shave off one step over towards a printer or some nonsense.
Right.
And I do speak from experience. I'm actually a Six Sigma black belt, so I've been there, done that, and I understand that it's really so much nonsense when you try to overcomplicate something that at its core should be fairly simple if you just let people do their job.
Yep. And communicate, right? I mean, with 10 terminal managers, one thing I noticed in those meetings I opened the interview with, everybody's communicating, everybody's heard, and everybody has a chance to speak up to get the help or the support that they need.
Well, and that's one of the biggest points of the meeting every day is so we can talk about what's going on, what do we need. And, that doesn't preclude the managers from, talking amongst themselves way before the meeting and, even after the meeting. They're always communicating, their needs, looking for, that extra capacity. Hey, I'm overbooked by 2 loads. Do you got any capacity? We can shift things around to help.
Yep.
And that's what the 2 o'clock call does, is it brings all that to the surface and gives everyone visibility.
And you can tell.
Yeah, it really is I think it's beneficial. When I first got here, I was like, man, that's a lot to do this every day.
No, it becomes like riding a bike after a while. It's just part of your day, right?
The benefit is truly there. It really is. And they're not long, 15 minutes.
Yep. Quick, to the point. And, it's, I guess, a little over communication never hurts when you're talking about the distance that you guys are working over as well. It'd be one thing if these terminals were all 5, 10, 15 minutes away and you were able to just go set foot inside of them all the time, but they're not. They're as far away as Texas and all over the place down there. So, it's it makes sense to me. And again, I know I'm kind of heaping the praise on you here, but it seriously is like, I told Jessica, my producer, after that meeting, I was like, if Sean ran every meeting that I took for the rest of my career, I would retire such a happy guy because I feel like it's
will say
done.
Thank you, because the level of grief that I am going to get from my managers when they listen to this, you have no idea. So thanks for that.
No problem. Hey, set them up, man. All you got to do is send me their contact info. We'll start getting them in here and get some grease on them too so that you can get back at them, okay?
There we go. I like that.
Yeah, I think it's awesome. I feel like everybody should be involved. One guy I haven't talked to yet on the pod here is Rodney, and he had our temporary tattoo on his face when we first started the podcast. That's dedication. So I'm looking for you terminal managers. Before you give Sean any guff about this episode, just know that your time's coming, okay? That's what we'll put out there as a little warning.
And we're all afraid to ask Rodney where the permanent tattoo ended up. Just throwing that out there.
I love it. So, something else that you said to me, obviously a big part of the job that we're doing here is the customer service angle of it, Sean. Very, very important. You can tell that the drivers really take pride in having a good customer service facing persona, and they want to be clean. You know, it's not a clean job, but they want to keep everything clean and tight and happy and friendly. You told me back at Discovery that if someone hurts a customer relationship, that their time here might be very short. Why is that line so firm from your seat, Sean?
Because without them, we have nothing. Without them, we are nothing. I've always been a firm believer in the layered structure of company first, obviously, and then customer and driver. The reason for that is without the company, obviously, we don't have a job, but without the customer and the driver, we don't have a company. So they support the company. The customer gives us the revenue. So pretty obvious where they fall. But the driver generates that revenue.
Right.
So, those are the most important aspects of this company is that customer and that driver. And I cannot allow there to be anything that would jeopardize the relationships with those customers.
And if you damage that relationship, it could have ripple effects for years down the line, just like keeping the relationship intact.
Oh, that's not a ripple effect. That's a tsunami. We're dead.
Yeah, that's a great way to put it. And so talk to me a little bit about what separates just a load hauler from a driver that actually understands the customer and exemplifies great customer service, Sean.
Well, look, I don't want to knock any driver out there in any segment of industry, but there are drivers that bump a dock, and then there are drivers that are hands-on and direct facing to the customer. They're not sitting in a truck, waiting for a lumper to offload their cargo through a bay. We are out there. We're face to face with the customer. We're physically unloading that trailer into their silo. We're the face. We're the face of our customer to their customer. And that's what I try to preach to these guys is, look, you guys are not representing bulk transit. And if we look bad, that our customer looks bad. We're their representation.
Exactly. It's twofold. It's going to reflect on your customer, and then it's going to reflect on the company after that. And so just vitally important. And I love the way that you kind of laid that out there, because that extra layer, a lot of times, a lot of the truck drivers I talk to from different podcasts will be servicing one customer. They don't have that extra layer of they're getting it from one customer, taking it to another customer. So very important stuff there. And look, I've already said it, but when I talk to the drivers on here, you can tell that they're keeping an eye on it. They're committed to it. They're dedicated to doing all those things you just said. I wonder if in your almost 30 years here in the industry, Sean, is there something that drivers might not realize that customers are keeping an eye on? Anything that you've noticed over your experience that, hey, I just randomly a driver was doing this really well and the customer was overwhelmed by it. Anything like that might help them just pay a little bit closer attention on their next drop off?
Honestly, just professionalism. It's sad to say that so much within the industry has changed over those years, and I don't want to sound like the crotchety old fart that's just been doing this too long, but there has been a lot of changes within the industry, and it's harder to find that level of professionalism anymore, and that resonates with these customers. It really does. When you show up and you do the simple things right, that actually gets noticed. Believe it or not, the simple things right get noticed. That driver was so professional. He was clean cut. He engaged with us. He, whatever it might be, or if something goes wrong, and let's face it, things go wrong. It happens.
Yep.
That, this happened, but man, that driver, he was apologetic about it. He wanted to help take care of it. He wasn't wanting to leave until we were good. Those things mean so much. Just
Yeah.
the little things, the simple things that you would think are just standard. They mean a lot to these customers.
Yeah, I mean, you think about every day, what, from the customer standpoint, they're just sitting, the guy that's sitting there is just getting in trucks all day long. That's his job. And if 9 out of 10 of those drivers get out of that truck with a scowl on their face and they're mad about traffic or whatnot, and then that 10th driver in the bulk or spur truck pulls up with a sunny disposition and a smile on his face, that can really go a long way in that customer's day.
Oh, you're absolutely right.
It goes a long way
100%.
in everybody's day. I love it when my wife comes home smiling. It's
What does that look like?
yeah. It's been a few weeks, Sean. So she's going on vacation next week, though. I'll be sure to tell you when she comes back because I guarantee she'll be smiling after a week off work.
Well, just in case my wife listens to this, I get that every time I come home.
Amen. And the dinners are always cooked perfectly, and everything is right in order, just how you dreamed it would always be, right?
Exactly.
I'm the same way, man. I'm the same way. Listen, we can CYA on this podcast just as well as we can get ourselves in trouble, okay?
But hey, you know what? She has supported me in this crazy industry for almost 30 years. So God bless.
That's amazing. That's amazing. And it's a lot, man. There's long hours in this industry, even if you're not driving. And obviously it encompassed a move from Texas for you and your family. So, but obviously the roots seem like they're in Columbus at this point, or they're in the surrounding area. You like living in Ohio now?
Yeah. It got us a little bit closer to home, a little bit closer to family. So, we can actually go see people without having to hop on a plane.
That's good.
Which is nice.
Yeah, that's nice. Now, have they wrapped you up in the whole Ohio State Buckeyes? Just the whole
it's
fanaticism
really
around there. Yeah.
Look at what they're doing.
Hey, I understand it. I'm not going to detract. I'm coming for you as an Oregon Duck. That's all I'll say. We strive to someday be on the same level, and I think we're closer than what people give us credit for. But I digress, as this isn't a football conversation.
It's good to have a goal.
It's
good to have a goal.
Amen to that. And that's actually a really good segue into the next part here that I wanted to get into. You talked a little bit when we sat down together about controlled growth and not just flying out there willy-nilly and taking shots at every single thing that presents itself. What does that mean in practice, Sean? Talk to me a little bit about how you guys are selective with the people you do business with and the controlled growth of Bulk and Spur.
It's about partnerships. When we look at controlled growth, I want to make sure, okay, is this something that we can succeed at? Because the last thing I want to do is make a commitment to a customer, especially a customer that we're currently doing business with, and then fail.
Mm-hmm.
So it's always important to look at, okay, what is it we're trying to do? Is this in our wheelhouse? Do we have the capacity to do this, or do we need to ramp up? What do we need to do to make sure that this is successful? And do we know this? Do we know this customer?
Right.
What's their track record? Is this a customer we want to do business with? Because we don't as a company like transactional customers. We want to build a relationship that sees us not as a vendor, but as a true partner.
Right. Makes sense. Now, what type of things are you evaluating off the jump to see that it is going to be a true partner? Is it, a lot of times if I were to ask that question to somebody in ops, they'll tell you, hey, equipment, volume, return, like these are the things we're looking at right off the jump. Are there a few things that make it into the conversation that you're having with yourself and everybody there at Bulk before equipment and volume and return, looking for a partner rather than somebody to vend for?
Well, a good bit of it is going to be, who are they? Where did they come from?
Mm-hmm.
Why did they reach out to us? What are their needs? Do they have ideal situations are, we grow organically within our own customer base, but that only goes so far. We obviously are going to look outside as well, but what is the opportunity? Again, is it the right fit? Before we ever even consider equipment, can we efficiently and effectively service this customer in these lanes? And we'll look at lanes specifically and say, You know what? These lanes are a great fit. These lanes over here, we'll tell them up front, look, we can price these, but they're outside of our network. We have a lot of deadhead. We don't know that we can effectively service these at a fair market rate. So, we look at all these things, and then beyond that, we get to the equipment. Do I have enough volume to dedicate equipment, or am I going to have to constantly be washing out? I don't like washing out for load changes because it's hard, and it opens up so much potential for contamination.
Right.
I'd much rather be able to say, okay, I've got enough volume to dedicate a trailer, 2 trailers, 3 trailers, whatever it might be.
Interesting stuff there. You think about business in general, and a lot of people run their businesses in the way that if it's an opportunity, they're going after it. I had a question here. You kind of already answered it. Is, have you ever turned down a business that looked good on paper? It sounds like with as in-depth as your evaluation is, the answer's probably yes to that question.
Yeah, absolutely. I have discussions. Typically the discussion will be between myself and Phil, our accounts manager. It'll, sometimes it'll expand over to Brian, and, we'll all sit down and collectively, look at something to determine, okay, can we legitimately do this? And, does it fit what we're trying to accomplish?
Sure.
So yeah, we have.
So something else you talked about that we're kind of going to piggyback off that a little bit. You were just talking about trailers and your volume and being able to dedicate trailers and things like that. Your equipment strategy here at Bulk and Spur is something we also touched about. It's sort of a business strategy in and of itself. You told me back when we were talking the first time that equipment is basically a math problem. Can you break that down for me? Somebody that is really bad at math, Sean, and put that in layman's terms for me.
Well, I mean, it's about revenue versus cost, obviously. So
right.
Will this piece of business support X number of trailers that are going to be required to run the business? That's one thing that you will find a lot of companies, especially, smaller companies, when you get into the behemoths like Quantix or Grundike or Trimac or, the huge monstrous carriers, they can afford to have equipment sitting around.
Right.
I know some companies that couldn't even tell you where their equipment is. They have so much of it.
Yeah, I've got a flatbed company that I do a show for that has 500 drivers but 1,500 trailers, and those things are spread from hell to breakfast, Sean. It's the best way I can describe it, man.
It is. It's crazy. I've seen companies that have. If you go to their terminal, you'll see out in the back 40. It looks like a scrapyard.
Yeah, I've seen it too. And so that basically we're talking about, not having a bunch of equipment sitting around. That means that you're going to be trading out equipment as equipment ages out, Sean. You also mentioned to me that running newer equipment is actually a cost advantage for you. Can you talk to me about that a little bit? Because I know the drivers are going to love to hear about this part.
Well, and you know what, obviously this is getting into, a little bit more of the, the ownership strategies, but
right.
Yeah, they're not afraid to put money into new equipment and cycle through older equipment. They're not afraid to do that at all. They do it regularly with tractors. They actually have a rotation for tractors that they'll trade out every year, a block of tractors.
Okay.
For newer equipment. The idea being, once you hit a certain point, that truck is going to be costing you more money than it's able to generate in maintenance. And if get out from under it before you reach that point and get the truck sold where it still has some value, then, that puts you ahead of the game. And the same really goes true for trailers as well. Not quite as much. I mean, they have a much longer lifespan, obviously, but because they're willing to take that step and purchase the equipment and keep the fleet refreshed, it gives us time to bring older equipment into the shops and, give them a refurbish.
Right.
Or maybe it's equipment that is just so old and so underutilized, it makes more sense to just sell it.
Yeah, it's not making any money just sitting there. That's for sure.
Yeah, yeah. So it's all about cycling the equipment through and keeping it fresh.
Sure. That's great strategy there. I love to hear that. And the reason I wanted to just touch on it a little bit is, like I said, find me the driver that's not happy with a refreshed fleet. I haven't met him yet. I don't know if they're out there or not, but and something actually, quick question that just popped into my head because you were talking about it there. What is the life cycle of a pneumatic trailer? I've never asked that question before.
And I can't give you a good answer because it's so dependent on the type of work that it's in.
Okay. That makes sense.
Yes. So, some of the equipment is in such harsh conditions that it's really bad on the undercarriages, the suspension, the framework. It's hard on it.
Sure.
So, that may not last as long as something that is in a clean environment that, doesn't get a lot of beating. The product isn't damaging to the equipment, to the metals. You got to remember we're taking some of this stuff into mines.
Right. Construction zones. Yeah, stuff like that. So not necessarily the product within the trailer that's eating away at the lifespan as much as just the environments outside the trailer that you're taking them in that can really beat them up. Interesting.
Exactly. And, my hat's off to a lot of these. A lot of our drivers are just really good about keeping up with it. We've got some operations that are just inherently dirty.
Mm-hmm.
It's just the way it is. You've talked to some of the drivers that handle lime and stuff.
Oh yeah. Yep. And we talked to a driver that was the victim of a flower blowout at one point in time.
I had never heard the term flower bomb until that episode. I got a good laugh out of that though.
Yeah. Right. And it's the nature of the business. Right. And I'm interested in that question because pneumatic trailers are such a specialized thing. And I did wonder, is like, hey, is it the product that beats up the trailers? And it can be, but these environments, man, I don't know if you've ever been down into a mine. If you're listening to this, I know a lot of the drivers listening have, but if anybody out there, just take a Google tour down into a mine sometime and see what the roads look like down there. You'll really get a good understanding for what Sean's talking about here. Okay, this has been awesome, Sean. We've covered so much here. I still have a little bit more for you, but I want to give you a little bit of space here. I've been peppering you with questions, like we're doing a 5 o'clock news hit here. What's on your mind right now that you might want to bring up here on Always Pneumatic, Never Static? Now that you've got this podcast, you're the star here. What do you want to say to the people out there listening right now about Bulk and Spur? What you guys have got going on?
I mean, honestly, we've already touched on it. Look, we've got just so much opportunity here to be a part of a family. And, that's what I would love more than anything to see out of these podcasts is for that word to get out. That way, other people can hear the excitement. And that's one thing I like about the podcast too, is you get to hear how someone feels about it. You get to hear the tone, the inflection in their voice. It's not just words on paper. So You can tell when someone is actually sincere about, what they're talking about, how they're feeling about it, versus somebody just writing something on a piece of paper. I could write something on paper all day long.
Right.
So if I wanted to get a word out, it really is just the level of care within this company. There's so many times that these drivers, they get paid so much more above, what we actually charge the customer in some instances, because it's the right thing to do. Brian's first thought in any situation is, what do we need to do to make sure the driver is taken care of? What do we do to make sure the driver is whole?
Yep, you can tell. And listen, it comes from everybody that I've talked to. Everybody has said that, whether it be safety, the drivers, terminal managers, yourself. And then, of course, when we had Brian and Andrea and Brad on here, they said that themselves. And it's one of those things where you can beat the drum for that stuff all day long, but if it doesn't happen in practice, people won't be pontificating about it, is I guess the way I'll put it. Even though that term has a bit of a negative connotation, I don't think so for something like this, because it really does have the gravity to change people's lives for the better. There's a lot of people, Sean, that get up every day that hate their job. And I've not talked to one person in the ecosystem of Bulk and Spur that has that air about them.
Yeah. Hey, from somebody that has been there, lived it, done it. Yes. It is refreshing to enjoy what you're doing and the company you're doing it for.
Yeah, yep, and who surrounds you when you're doing it, man. That's great stuff. What do you think you're the most proud of in your time at Bulk and Spur that you've accomplished? Anything that sticks out to you?
Wow, that's a good one. I mean, just building it to me, just building the relationships.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm not the one doing anything. I'm probably one of the most useless people in this company.
Well, you're a Six Sigma black belt. I mean, come on, we could put you to use if we needed to, right?
But that is not what we need. I want to be here to support. I want to be here when someone needs me to help guide, to answer questions, to keep things as best I can pointed in the right direction.
So the fact that people have developed a trust in you is something that you're really proud of, it sounds like.
Yes, thank you. Yes.
Yeah.
And I do feel that, I see a difference between when I first got here and now, as far as, how the people respond to me, the relationships that have developed. I feel, or at least I hope, that there's trust. And that's what I want more than anything, is, that they know, look, I'm here for you. If I've got something to say that we need to work on, it's because I want you to succeed.
Mm-hmm.
And if you're doing something great, man, I want to make sure you know that is kick-ass, man. That is awesome. Love that.
Look, it's true, man. I see it. You've complimented me on podcast episodes. You know how good that makes me feel to see an email come through from one of you guys saying, hey, that was a good episode. I mean, that's all people need. You stop and tell somebody they're doing a good job when they're doing a good job once in a while. It can go a long way, and it builds that trust that you're talking about and that camaraderie that makes the job fun, makes the job easy to accomplish. It's a big, well-oiled machine. We've talked about it, and it's spread out all over the place. But you guys do a great job in that communication department. I can see that because of how much communication I have to send your guys' way just to make the podcast happen. You guys are always Johnny on the spot, all the way to the highest levels of management. And that, to me, really says something about the way you view all your employees, the entire company, and whatever going on in their day is equally as important as what else might be going on in somebody else's day. You can really feel it, Sean, for sure.
The level of care out there, amongst everyone is just phenomenal. And look, nobody's perfect. There's always things that you have to work on. I've always believed, hey, look, you focus on their strengths and that's what you drive forward with. And then you can work on the weaknesses. It's okay.
Right. Yeah. Take a little bit of time every now and then and work on the short game. We need it. It's costing us strokes out there, right?
Yeah.
We're never going to be short on the golfing references here, especially when I got a fellow golfer on the line with me. So let's zoom out a little bit.
Don't call me a golfer. That would be completely out of context with what
okay.
I do.
A hacker. That's where I'm at too, man.
Better.
I'm out there aerating the course, taking chunks out of it. So
there you go.
Let's zoom out a little bit here, Sean, and talk about the industry at large just for a couple minutes here. I've had you on for quite a long time now, but you're a very knowledgeable guy in this industry, and what we're seeing right now, obviously, the environment internationally is causing diesel prices to go up. At the same time, we're having a lot of capacity loss in the industry. We're seeing rates start to crawl back up. We're seeing rejection rates rise. A lot of that doesn't necessarily touch pneumatics, but I know that it does weave its way in there. How are we feeling right now about the market in general? I know that by and large, Bulk is healthy. You guys have got great relationships that run, and your drivers are rolling. But what's the temperature right now from your seat on the industry at large?
I mean, if you look at the industry at large, there are segments that are really, really struggling. One good thing about this company and about our segment of industry is it's very niche.
Mm-hmm.
It's highly specialized. That does provide at least a little bit of an insulator to, you know, what we're seeing out there. We're not immune by any stretch, but it does help, you know, us to be able to function within that smaller bubble,
Mm-hmm.
which is really good. I think it's really good. I think there's a lot of opportunity out there right now, more than you might even realize. Drivers, that's one of the biggest things is, look, we need drivers just like everybody else needs drivers. So if I were to say anything being a focal point right now, it's, let's get our driver count up. Let's get the people behind the wheel that can make this happen.
There you go. Well, we're going to turn to Rachel Della Pasta next week to talk to her for her employee spotlight. So we'll check in with her and see how she's doing on getting you those drivers, the right ones, in the truck, so you guys can keep moving everything forward.
She does
Sean.
a phenomenal job.
She does, and these last 3 episodes between Tim, yourself, and Rachel are 3 that I really look forward to because 3 awesome conversations. I felt like I had a friend in the room after we left those conversations, and I think it's really showing here as I get to actually sit down and talk to you guys on record. Sean, this has been a phenomenal conversation. We've gone through everything that I've got here for you. I always clear just a little bit of space at the end of each interview for final thoughts. This can be shout outs in case you would like to say hi to your wife in case she listens, shout outs to employees. If there's anything we left on the table that you'd like to discuss, we can do that here as well. The floor is yours, my friend. Director of Operations for Bulk and Spur, Sean Stevens. Thank you so much for the time. Final thoughts from you today before we let you go.
Well, you kind of put me on the spot with the shout out to the wife. So if I don't do it now, it's not going to look good. So obviously, shout out to my lovely bride, Luann. I'd be remiss if I didn't. Shout out to my daughter, Kaylee, as well. So get that out of the way. But yeah, we've covered a lot, and I've really enjoyed it. Feels good to be able to have a conversation about something I'm excited about. And I'll be honest, it's refreshing to have a company that I'm able to work for that I am excited about.
Yep.
So, I want to share that. I want other people to come in and see it and realize it. Opportunities to grow.
Absolutely. Well, it sounds like they're getting some leaf blowing going right outside your window there. So
I'm glad you can hear that.
No, that's all right. It'll put our editor Mike to work. I actually just saw him. He walked away, so he knows that you're in here doing something important. But Sean, thank you so much, Director of Operations for Bulk and Spur. You've got a wide open invitation to come on this show anytime you want to. If we can ever make anything easier from your seat, by helping getting a message out or spreading information, we're happy to do it, man. Thank you so much for the time today. This has been awesome.
I appreciate it, Marcus. I've really enjoyed it. You're very easy to talk to, so looking forward to the next time around.
All right, sounds good. Take it easy, Sean. We'll be right back.
All right.
What an episode today here on Always Pneumatic, Never Static. I can't thank Sean enough. Whenever I get somebody in here and you look up and you've already been talking for 40 minutes and it seems like you're only a third of the way through what you've prepared to talk about, that's when you know that things are going good. It happened with Tim, and I'll be honest, it happened with Sean. I got to a lot of the things I had prepared for Sean, but there's a lot more that we could still get to, and so we'll get him back on this show very soon. I love doing these employee spotlights because it is rare that you get to sit down. Sean said it right there at the end of the conversation. It's rare that you get to sit down and speak openly at length about something that you really enjoy. It could be a conversation where maybe you're in a room talking about your favorite football team or your favorite golf ball, whatever it may be, but that's kind of a bouncing around conversation. This is more of a focused conversation. And Sean did such a great job, man. Just knocked it out of the park. Really pulling back the curtain a little bit and giving us a look at why things run so well. Here, 11 episodes in, I can tell you, things are running well. We've talked to enough people to know you guys are happy doing what you're doing, and you're happy doing it who you're doing it for and who you're doing it along with. So that's been said, right? We've put a point on that. We've made that point. Now we can talk about why a little bit. And last week with Tim, this week with Sean, that's two of the big whys, right? Safety, it's a big thing in trucking. Operations, we probably don't operate very well without them. So next week, we're going to jump in again to another employee spotlight and bang out 3 of them in a row here. We're going to welcome Rachel Della Pasta, as I mentioned, from recruiting, and we're going to talk all about what it takes to get some good drivers in at Bulk and Spur, and we've got them. I've talked to them. I've talked to a bunch of them, man. They enjoy the job. They do great work, and they've said, I think a couple of them on the air here, this is the last company I'll ever work for if they'll keep me. That's saying something, man. There's a lot of turnover in this industry. You don't have to do 28 or 30 years in it like Sean did, or has, excuse me, to be able to tell that it's a high turnover industry, the transportation industry, especially with drivers. So when we've got drivers coming on here saying, man, I'm sticking around, or hey, I stuck around and I'm not there anymore, because we have talked to retired drivers on this show as well. It just says something, man. And listen, actions speak louder than words. That's something I think we're all familiar with now. And what those of you that have come on the show have told me is that the actions that everybody at Bulk and Spur takes, from the DeWolfs all the way down, those actions are what really tell the story, because people don't just say it. It's not just lip service. They actually live it. They actually execute it every single day. And it shows. It shows so much, we made a gosh dang podcast about it. And we're so happy to welcome any of you that want to come on here and talk about the greatness that is this company that you work for. We want to talk about the culture that we've established here. We want to talk about the day-to-day. We'll talk about anything. Next up is something that I really can't wait to talk to you guys about. After we talk to Rachel next week, the following week, we will be talking to drivers about their off-time hobbies. And you got to get in touch with me. I told you off the top of the show, I want to remind you, it's not often that I get into homework at the end of the show, but this is a homework assignment for you. If you're interested in coming on the podcast and talking about underwater basket weaving, spear fishing for orca, perhaps you have, you're one of the few people that have run down a deer and tackled it only to kind of catch and release it like a trout. I do not care. If you drift race go-karts on the weekend, love to talk to you about it. If your whole thing is to sit down with a fat Sudoku book and a hot cup of coffee, tell me what that does for you. I want to talk about them. Hobbies are so important in our daily lives, and especially working a job that's as demanding as what Bulk and Spur drivers' job is. So get in my inbox by heading over to podcast.bulktransit.com. You heard Sean say it at the end there. I'm not patting myself on the back here, but I am easy to talk to. And listen, my mom's been telling me that for years, and you always listen to your mom, so I've believed it. I believed it about myself since I was a young kid. I don't know what it is. I don't necessarily think it's a skill that I hone. I'm generally curious, and I want to talk to you about what you're doing when that truck is off. So hop on over to the website, once again, podcast.bulktransit.com, and send me an email. You can also catch up with all the episodes over there. There's quizzes up there to test your mettle, see if you've really been paying attention during these episodes. And, of course, we've already given away 2 really sweet cooling vests. We will have another giveaway coming up around the bend sometime. We're going to space it out a little bit. We don't want to, just blow out and give everything that we've got to give away in the first 10, 15 episodes. We gotta make you guys carrot and stick this thing a little bit. We do have some cool giveaways coming up. and they will be up there on the website, podcast.bulktransit.com, once we get around to it. Next week, look forward to Rachel Della Pasta making her podcast debut. Can't wait to talk to her. We had a fun conversation out there in Columbus. And the following week, we talk off-time hobbies. So get your emails into me right now. This has been Always Pneumatic, Never Static. I want to say, again, a huge thank you to Sean Stevens, Director of Operations for Bulk and Spur. Gave us almost a full hour on the air here today. Can't thank him enough. Awesome stuff. We're going to continue to bring you great content every single Wednesday at 5 a.m. local time. So be safe out there, Bulk and Spur, and we'll see you next week.
And that's all she blows for today's episode of Always Pneumatic, Never Static, your number one and probably only pneumatic trucking podcast, brought to you by Bulk Transit. Thanks for rolling with us today. Till next time, stay safe, keep those lines clear, and keep it pumping.